All right, so my next guest is Brian Doyle from VCIO Toolbox. Now, VCIO Toolbox was one of the 2023 PitchIT finalists. And of course, we're trying to bring you all of the great information from last year's PitchIT so that you can get ready for this year's PitchIT. Very excited to be a part of the PitchIT journey this year. And Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no worries. So give me the elevator pitch on VCIO Toolbox.
Sure. So VCIO Toolbox is a unified account management and advisory platform that really helps MSPs consolidate a couple different tools they use, QBR and GRC, into one platform, but allow them to also unify the roadmap with their customer. And realistically, what we do is help them hold better meetings, better discussions, and really help drive action with their client partners.
Okay, and it's that action that provides more opportunities and therefore more revenue and gets you down that path of not only the extra revenue and the opportunities, but also making sure that you still have a happy client.
Yeah, this is all about retention. And if it's done in a more consultative approach, it kind of becomes a foregone conclusion when it comes time to get that revenue opportunity. It really becomes the customer sticking to a roadmap and a plan, understanding what the business outcomes are going to be, and being happy to move forward with it. And as a result, you've got a happier client, happier relationship, and hopefully a long-term relationship.
Yep. Expectations go a very long way. So what motivated you guys to enter the competition, and what were kind of your goals in joining the PitchIT competition last year?
Sure. So our motivation for joining the program last year was very simple. One, we're a bootstrap company, so we're always looking for ways to get some additional branding and exposure out in the marketplace. And certainly this was a great opportunity to partner with a good company like ConnectWise, who can certainly help elevate us in that area with their audience. But the other part was to really understand outside the silo we live in, are we pitching appropriately? Are we conveying the right message? And I shouldn't leave this out. Another huge opportunity was the ecosystem part of it, and really getting to know the other players within the PitchIT program, and building some relationships with some people that might be on the same trajectory as we are.
Awesome. So what did you guys do to prepare for the PitchIT competition? Did you have a strategy or anything else?
So we didn't necessarily go into it with a strategy. I've been, and this is a little bit of a humbling moment for me, because I went into this as a guy that's been pitching products and, pitching services most of my life as an MSP and certainly beyond as well. And we went into it really saying, let's refine, and we're focusing on really kind of the branding and the exposure and the expansion of ecosystem part of it. Then we had our first event where we had to do a pitch, and I had to do a 30-second pitch, and I was against Tiffany over at Hackware, and I give a big shout out to her because she basically did 30 seconds and dropped the mic. And when that happened, I realized I wasn't really prepared for this thing, and I better start taking it a little bit more seriously, that just showing up isn't going to be enough.
So based on that experience, what did you do to prepare for the next one to capture the judges and the audience's attention?
First of all, tighten up my times. That was a big part of it. But second thing, really look at, what we were trying to convey as a message and architect it a little bit differently. And this is where a lot of the coaches that were inside this process really helped out as well. At that stage, I'll give a shout out to Sean Lardo as the organizer. One of the things he did was kind of worked with me a little bit like, hey, you need to approach this here. You need to approach this there. And the second thing we had to do is take what is a pretty complex account management tool that also has, security and compliance capabilities in it, and figure out how to talk about that in 30 seconds, in 5 minutes, in a minute. And, that really helped us get more focused on that message. And that's, where the preparation came in. And then it became cadence. You just got to keep doing it, right? Until you get it right.
So along with that, was there a kind of like a turning point in the process where you guys kind of thought you caught traction?
Well, I'll go the other way. The biggest turning point was getting humbled, right? And that really helped us kind of drive it forward. But where we saw that we got traction was over the next couple, webinars and recordings that we did in preparation of this. We started seeing that we were able to get to that good message. I was able to convey it appropriately for our organization, and the feedback coming back was good. And I think the channel program was where the real moment I felt confident when we did the channel program round, where I felt confident that, hey, we might be onto something here, because our pitch was right, hit the mark, but more importantly, I dropped the mic right on the 5-minute mark, not 5:01, not 5:02. And I knew we really had practiced and worked hard and got to that point where the message was tight.
Yep. And I know that Channel Program has been very involved with PitchIT, and I, Channel Program is a big supporter of All Things MSP, and likewise, we love what Channel Program is doing over there. So shout out to them. I want to talk a minute about Cameo coaches, because I've gotten some really good feedback on how helpful the Cameo coaches were to the PitchIT participants. And what was your experience with the Cameo coaches?
So one of the most interesting things was, when you looked around the ecosystem, everybody was at a different point. Some people had owned companies before. Some people had actually taken vendors to, great lengths and great exits. And then there were people that this was their first company. So when you looked at the ecosystem of Cameo coaches that they brought to us, there was something for everybody. Certainly there were certain topics that, for me, I was like, I think I know a lot about this topic, but you'd still be able to pull in a nugget or two as well. But really, it just gave you different points of views to problems that each and every one of us have experienced at some point during our startup growth journey.
So then I'm going to get a little bit deeper. Who was your favorite Cameo coach?
So I'm not going to say favorites. I'm going to say in terms of the topics and those that conveyed them, right? So we were speaking about Michelle McBain before we got started here, right? Her social media and her approach there was a great listen for me, because that's an area that I personally struggle with. I'm not very good about talking about myself. You've even heard me here kind of give we, even though I was the guy that was the speaker during this conversation. So, she really helped in kind of giving me a different way to approach social media in a way that I was comfortable with. And not to tout both sides of the McBain coin, but Jay was great as well, because his conversation about ecosystem and the fact that we have 2,100 places that we need to touch in order to be everywhere really hit home with, hey, go find those 3 or 4 places you can really be and maximize those journeys. The final one I want to give a shout out to is also David Sook Brown. He was one of the first ones, and I feel like I do pretty well as a public speaker, but there were some amazing nuggets that he put forth there. And he's somebody that I've really carried a relationship even beyond the event with as well. And it's great to kind of learn from him and some of his teachings.
Yeah, Danny's great as well. So being a finalist now, obviously you got to go a little bit farther in the process than some other people. How did that impact? You've already talked a lot about the visibility piece. How did that impact the visibility piece, specifically being a finalist in the program?
Much more than I expected. When we went into PitchIT, we were really excited about the exposure we're going to get. And the way we looked at it is we've got 6 months to maximize this journey, post as much as we can about it, and really, leverage that. Did not realize how much that 3x if you did make the finals, because then you got a lot of concentrated one-on-one exposure in the 6 or so weeks it was before we went down to IT Nation, right? So I was really surprised, how much attention ConnectWise took with each one of us as we were getting in there to help us get that exposure, but also the feedback from those that were out there watching these things now that we kind of had the legitimacy, I guess, of getting to the finals, and that's a statement I don't want to really put out there like anything was better, because there were some unbelievable products and we did not expect to be in the finals. But I think sometimes it's the timing, the maturity, and the type of product you have too, if it's resonating with the marketplace as a whole at the time of the finals.
Yeah. So I think that's really great that PitchIT does such a job of trying to get you guys as much visibility as possible. And one of the other things that the contestants and some of the other players in the PitchIT program have talked to me about is the relationships and partnerships that came out of the PitchIT program. Have you developed any of those special relationships or partnerships with any of the other contestants?
Absolutely. We're developing some integrations with a number of the contestants that we're working with. Certainly there's some business exchange and knowledge. Matter of fact, Nodeware, who was one of the finalists, we announced an integration just before the finals. So, it was a real good opportunity for us to get together, and our products are very symbiotic. So it allows us to now take out messages, and we're still, 4 months after the show, and we're planning this year's co-marketing events right now.
So even though you're competing with each other, there's still this spirit of collaboration that seems to permeate this little section corner of the world that we call the IT services channel.
Yeah, while we're all in competition with one another, and certainly, the opportunity to win, some money is always great, right? But the real reality is we're all looking at how to 4x, 5x our business over the next few years. And you can't do that alone, right? You need to build an army. You need to get a bunch of folks that you can collaborate with and work with very closely to, the rising tides theory, right? So,
Yep.
When you really look at this process, the finals definitely gave us a little bit more exposure, a little bit more of a run, but the initial program is really where we built the relationships that last.
So what's the best piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's considering entering the PitchIT program for 2024?
Don't feel like you're not ready, but also make sure that your product has gotten enough traction that you can really convey your message. There's a lot of times that you want to go out there as a brand new startup, but I know it took us almost 2 years of really talking to our customers to really hone in on what our product market and fit was going to be long term. So once you get that down, that's when I'd say jump into that program, because now you're ready to expand, and now you can really convey your message both to the contestants you're working with as well as the community that you're speaking to throughout the process.
And what would be your advice to somebody who maybe, gets into the PitchIT program for 2024? What is your advice to try and get from contestant to finalist?
Be humble, listen to the feedback, take the constructive criticism. If you get it, there's a reason for it. And if you listen to it, great things can happen. The second thing, practice. Nothing beats practicing, until you get that repetition down of your pitch, which is going to help you in all walks of life. You're really not ready to go out in front of people. So if you think you can wing it, as I did in that first webinar, and I could just lean on my experiences in the past, you'll probably find yourself on the wrong side of the table.
Yeah. A lot of times humbling brings about reflection.
Yep.
And reflection with the right input from coaches, mentors, whatever, often leads to a pivot or an evolution. Where has VCIO Toolbox evolved or pivoted since the PitchIT program?
Well, where we pivoted a little bit was understanding where we really fit. While we have a QBR capability, while we have a governance, risk, and compliance capability, those things are core to our product. It was really that we need to educate the marketplace, and we need to help MSPs understand why they have opportunities to go beyond the QBR, building fractional VCIO and VCISO services, and really create new revenue streams within their business. And our messaging reflects that. And really the way we're now building our product and building our tool is really focused on those aspects as well. The QBRs are great, but QBRs are only one aspect of the client touch relationship.
Right. So I know we're winding down our time here, but is there anything else that you'd like to share about your PitchIT experience that we haven't covered yet?
I think we've covered most of the major ones. I think the real thing is, I guess I'll speak more to the folks that are on the fence thinking if they should jump in. Do it, because throughout this 6-month process, and I think that's a really big part of this, it's not a month, it's not 2 months, it's 6 months. We have, the Cameo coaches. We have a lot of time to present our products, a lot of time to refine that speech. And you really come out of it the other end with a much better message to take to your marketplace, especially if, like ourselves, we're bootstrap and there's only a few of us in the organization. We can get very used to hearing each other and saying yes, right? And this allowed some people to tell us no and think differently.
Yeah, and that's another place where those relationships come in, right? Because now you have this whole field of other vendors who are in similar situations as you that you can call up, you can email, and ask those questions to.
Yeah, sometimes it's tough to see the flaws in your product, right? And you need some feedback in order to get there.
Well, especially when you're in the day-to-day, right? And you're looking at the minutia, it takes somebody else who's able to step back, zoom out, and kind of take a look at your business to provide you with the right feedback.
Absolutely.
Well, Brian, thank you very much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to some great things from VCIO Toolbox.
Thank you as well, Eric. Appreciate you having me on.